Thanks so much to the American Geographical Society for inviting me to join you today. I'm very excited and looking forward to talking to you about how the changing nature of proximity in the 21st century can be understood through the lens of connectography. Well, what is connectography? A neologism, a portmanteau, a blend of two very important words, connectivity and geography. Now, the first thing I want to say is that when I speak about geography, I speak about geographies, plural, and that's not something we tend to do. We tend to think of geography as almost synonymous with natural geography. That's the first map here you see on the top of the screen. And indeed, there is nothing more fundamental, you might say, than our earth science, than our natural geography, our ecosystems, our environment, our topography, our geology. And here, though, it isn't as fixed as many of us grew up believing. We tended to see brown for the deserts, green for the forests, blue for the oceans, white for the ice, and so forth. But the location of these is actually changing given rising sea levels, polar ice cap melt, desertification, rivers drying, and a wide range of other climatological phenomena. So the map of natural geography is one map, but it is a dynamic map in and of itself. And that's just one kind of geography. The second kind of geography that people think of, or the mind gravitates towards when they speak of geography, is political geography, which is how we divide up the world into sovereign nations or into administrative units. But even there, too, we tend to take the map of today, the map that may hang on your wall in a classroom or in an office, as fixed, as final. But it never was, and it never will be. If you go back to 1945, when the United Nations was founded, there were 51 member states. Today, there are 200. So fight it though you might, resist it. The political map of the world is changing. The border lines are changing. Empires rise and fall. States collapse. There's irredentism, secessionism, and those movements that give rise to new political units. And even that map will mask the degrees of autonomy and devolution that really do shape the political character of societies. So again, political geography is one type of geography, and it also is highly internally dynamic. The third layer is functional geography, the built environment, infrastructure. And this is where connectography comes in. It's the connectivity that we build across our natural and political geography. And this map is very rarely seen in offices and classrooms, even though if you add up the highways, the railways, the pipelines, the electricity grids, the internet cables that are wrapping themselves around the world, it's far longer in total mileage than all of the borders in the world put together. And it is how we use geography. Now, of all the maps, this might be the one that is the most rapidly evolving and changing and dynamic, because we are building so much infrastructure, because investment is so fungible, capital investment, because we're building new things, because cities are growing or shrinking. And so all of that is our functional geography. All of our supply chains in the world, that which connects the physical movement of not just goods, but even data or capital, rests on some physical infrastructure that exists and that is being built. And so there's an incredible dynamism in a functional geography as well. Then there's the fourth layer of geography, which is, of course, human geography, which is not only the actual physical distribution of people around the world, it's so much deeper than that. It's our ethnographic composition and anthropological history and various other cultural traits and features. A lot of those are part of the story of human geography. But even if you reduced it merely to this is where the people are, this has been incredibly dynamic throughout history. Think about the past 100,000 years since our ancestors began wandering out of Africa and colonizing the different continents. And some people think also that the map of human geography today, where people are, this is somehow natural, this is how it should be, this is how it always will be. That's also not true. In fact, we have more people on the move than ever before. Just before COVID, in the year 2019, 1.5 billion people crossed borders. Today, more than 300 million people live outside their country of birth or origin. So we have each of these four layers of geography, these four geographies, each of which is internally so dynamic. And then they all actually do coexist and collide and reinforce and amplify each other on this one planet that we share and that these geographical lenses share. So connectography is actually not just about the functional geography. It's about the dynamic relationship or interrelationship between the two. So remember, natural geography, political geography, functional geography, human geography. And now, where does it go from here? And how does connectography relate to it? So now I'm going to speak a little bit about just one example of how natural geography and the change, which is to say climate change in that, affects another lens of it, which is human geography. So here you're seeing the present distribution of the human population, about 8 billion pixels. In fact, to be precise, 8 billion pixels on this map. Each of us is one. But now look closely at the centers of population, particularly Asia, whether it's East Asia, South Asia, Africa, and other geographies. And now watch this overlay of what is called the suitability index. And this is looking at geographies according to whether they're becoming more or less suitable for human habitation as the Earth warms, as temperatures rise in our atmosphere. So it's not only temperature rise, but the combined effects of various facets of climate change. And red indicates locations that are becoming less livable over time as temperatures move into that 1.5, 2 degree, perhaps 3 degree Celsius range. And green indicates places that are becoming more livable than they have been over time, again, suitable for human habitation. And so you see the tragic irony, you might say, of the world today is that so much of the world population presently resides in places that are densely populated and becoming less livable over time as climate change unfolds. Whereas from a human geographic standpoint, the places that are either sparsely populated and even depopulating appear to be becoming more livable and habitable over time. Now, I called it a tragic irony, and it is. In fact, I can think of nothing more morally perverse, you might say, in the entire world today than the fact that is reflected in this map. Because not only are we talking about this severe misalignment of where people are in the world versus the places that are becoming more livable, but if you look at human geography with one level more granularity around the demographic, the age structure, it's mostly young people. It's the future of our species that in particular is, you might say, trapped in places that are becoming less and less livable over time. And as you know, that's largely no fault of their own, because climate change is something that has been a largely man-made, cumulative consequence of generations, centuries of industrial activity, particularly in the last 50 to 100 years. So this is the point of departure, you might say, for thinking about how do we rectify this situation? What comes next? We have a world, again, if you add in another layer, the borders again, the political geography, in which you cannot simply have and do not have the free mobility of people around the world. That's just not the reality we live in. In fact, we've never had more borders than we have right now, which compounds the irony. So we have severe restrictions on the movement of people, which would allow us to realign the human geography and the natural geography, but the political geography intervenes in that. And that's the situation we're in right now. So is mobility destiny? Yes, it is, but not for everyone, not in the same time scale, and therefore not at the speed that might be necessary to preserve our overall future, if you will. I do believe that we have a nomadic past. In fact, that is true. We are a nomadic species, as I mentioned before, for hundreds of thousands of years. Mankind has been moving around the world and populating different continents. This shows you some of the anthropological record we have from DNA samples showing the spread of populations over time and how we moved across those continents. And what's so fascinating is that some of the genetic mingling that has occurred over the past, particularly 30,000 years of our species, has happened in places where you have junctures, collisions of migrating proto-human species, again, going back tens of thousands of years. And that's led to everything from the ways in which populations that currently reside on opposite ends of the planet actually have common DNA ancestry that can be traced to locations like the steppelands of Central Asia, but also how even modern linguistic zones were formed, such as the Indo-European languages spoken by about a third of the global population. You can find cognates and common roots of terms that stem to periods of time when we've had these genetic migratory conditions. So the movement of people is crucial to the realignment of geographies, and the movement of people affects in many ways, of course, politics and borders and so forth. And so the final map that I want to show is one that really brings it all together. A map that appreciates that we live in a world of geographies, not just one geography. So here you have a sort of color-coded density of human populations. You even have natural resource deposits with color coding. You have the white lines for the political borders. You have the internet cables across the oceans. You have the pink for the railways and the blue and green shades for the electricity grids and oil pipelines and so forth. So here you have a truly complex map, and this is truly the map of connectography. The true map of connectography is the map of everything. It's how we use and build across and the space that we have, but also the frictions that constrain that movement and that connectivity, such as the borders themselves. And it is the reconciliation of our demographics, of our resources, of our borders, and our infrastructure that is the dynamic interplay of these four layers of geography. And this is, of course, the most living, breathing, dynamic map of all, because this would change every second, every moment. The data packets moving through internet cables, the planes and the ships crisscrossing the continents and the seas, the borders that are moving, again, the new railways that are being built, and the movement of people as population densities shift. All of this is the perpetually evolving story of connectography, and therefore it changes our proximity to each other, our proximity, again, to resources, to the built environment, to different political institutions. All of those change as we move, as we build. And so, in a way, whereas the original, one of the phrases that students always learn about geography is destiny, I believe that's not true. I believe connectivity is destiny, and we make of geography, or geography rather, is not destiny. Geography is what we make of it. And with that, I hope that you will carry forward and take this lens, this vision of connectography into your studies of geography. Thank you very much.